again for joining us for our discussion on brand management. We've got 4 phenomenal panelists with us today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in just a moment. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brian Finelli, and I'm one of the career coaches in Lindner's Career Services office, and I work with undergraduate marketing students, last names L through Z. And I am joined by my colleague, Carly Trimboli. I'll let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're looking forward to an exciting conversation about branding.
Absolutely. And Carly works with marketing students, last names A through K, and then masters of marketing students as well. So I'm going to go ahead and we will turn it over to our panelists to let them introduce themselves and kind of what they have done or are doing in brand management. And before we do that, though, I will say for all of the students on this call, please feel free to think of any questions that you have for our panelists. So I have some questions that I will be asking them, but we would love to hear what's on your mind so that this conversation is as relevant as possible for all of you. So let's go ahead and we'll start with Roseann. Roseann, tell us a little bit about yourself. Sorry, we'll go in alphabetical order, last name. You're first. Tell us a little bit about your background in brand management.
Okay. Well, hey, good to see everybody. You're the highlight of my day. Clearly, you know, we're all at home doing what we're doing. I am a marketing professor, so some of you I recognize. Good to see you. And I teach branding and marketing and international business and advertising at Lindner. But my background started back when I was your age in brand management at P&G. So I worked at P&G in the bar soap and household cleaning products division. I did that for several years here in town. I then went to Boston and got my MBA at Harvard after working for a few years. Then transitioned to work at Reebok, running their indoor fitness businesses and then eventually all of their women's businesses before coming back to town, where I had always actually had a long-term goal of being involved in the social impact sector. And I started a not-for-profit in partnership with P&G and a local foundation around parenting, which I ran for over a decade before transitioning to do the thing I wanted to do at the end of my career, which is teach. So I got my PhD at Lindner. I am boldly Bearcat, and it's in branding, specifically around brand-human relationships and where our relationships mirror those we have with humans and where they don't. So that's a little background on what brought me to the table. But good to see you all and happy to be here.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Roseann. And I think that most of the people that are panelists today have had you in class.
Which is awesome.
Including myself.
Hopefully that'll be all of you.
Yes. So it's great to have you here with us. Let's go ahead and we'll move on to Kat from P&G. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really happy to be here today. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Cincinnati. I've lived here my whole life, went to UC, took branding with Roseann, and also had Carly as well for career services. So yeah, I was a marketing major, and I actually graduated about a year and a half ago. So I'm still pretty new to P&G and brand management, but graduated in spring of 2019, and I'm now a senior brand manager at P&G, working on the hand dish team. So I own parts of Dawn dish soap and also Gain dish soap. You might not have heard about it, but go check it out if you haven't. So yeah, still getting acclimated and everything, but feel super grateful to be in this role and learning a lot every day and growing and innovating the brands and helping them best meet the needs of our consumers, especially in times of COVID like we're in right now. So it's been a very interesting role and really excited to answer your questions today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kat. It's great to have you here. We will go ahead and move on to Kyle. Oh, Kyle, you are on mute.
I figured that would happen to me. Hey, everybody. So my background is a little bit different. I went to school in New York for my first 2 years with a focus on pre-law and accounting, way different than marketing for sure. And then I transferred to UC and Carly was actually the first person that I probably came in contact with when I arrived in the middle of the school year. And I knew I was going to UC for marketing. And she kind of helped me get my co-ops and progress in my career until I through graduation. And then I went on and I was the CEO of a soccer club in Cincinnati, where I worked on building a brand and digital footprint that grew to about $2 million as a nonprofit youth soccer club in the Mason area. And then after that, I took a job at Sizemore and Company, where I'm at now. Started working with one of the brands, and now I oversee the holding company, which is Sizemore and Company. And then we own 5 brands underneath of it in various industries, construction to staffing to startup investments. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. That is awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Kyle. And then last but not least, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. Eric Kraft. My path is probably strangely different than everybody else's. My undergrad's actually music education. I was a teacher for a little bit and decided I wanted to do something different. Ended up finding a role at a home builder doing construction, and then with the marketing and operations part of the brand. So I knew I wanted to do something different. Actually applied to go to grad school at UC, and I made it in there. Dr. Hassey was my marketing for managers professor. Learned a ton from her. After graduation, I did a little bit of consulting with some branding and advertising firms in Cincinnati before I took the job at Eli Lilly and Company. And now I'm currently the associate brand manager on a rheumatoid arthritis drug called Olumiant. And I hope none of you ever have to take it, but if you do, you'll be in good hands. So excited to answer any questions you guys have.
Phenomenal. Such a rich diversity of experiences here today. So we're excited to pick your brains a little bit about the field of brand management. So to kick things off, in my role as a career advisor for marketing students, I feel that the role of brand management tends to be the most elusive and maybe misunderstood discipline within the field of marketing. I think oftentimes students get this conception of like, well, branding and being a brand manager is like really to do with like the design of packaging and products. And that tends to be, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions I face in my role. So I'm wondering if all of us or all the panelists today can maybe shed some light on what you perceive to be the misconceptions of brand management and how maybe you yourself would define being a brand manager or an associate brand manager. So we'll kick it off there, and I'll let you all just kind of have at it as thoughts come up. So just remember before you speak. So misconceptions about brand management and how you would really define the role of a brand manager.
So I definitely agree with you that there are misconceptions around brand, and I think that I even had them before I really got into it and saw the work at P&G. But it definitely is more than just what you think of when you think about marketing. So you're not just developing advertisements or looking at labels the majority of the time. I do that, but I would say that is like maybe 10% of what I do. The other 10% is managing the budget. It's tracking our trends at different retailers, working with the sales team, working with the finance team. Right now, shipments and any out of stocks at retailers potentially because of Corona. So I would define it as being the hub of the wheel. And again, I heard that before I got to P&G, but I didn't have a full grasp of it until I really got into the work. So in brand, they say that you're the hub of the wheel. So you brand, and then you're working with finance, design, R&D, CMK, sales, all these different functions. And you really have to work and then pull, the team together and deliver the best product or recommendations possible. And in a way, you're not a marketer, you're the CEO of your brand or the part of the brand that you're working on. And I think that is the biggest misconception. And when you hear it, you're like, whoa, CEO, but that really is what they want you to think like you have to have that CEO mentality. they'll give you, like a result or a goal that they want you to hit, and you pull the team together, you drive the work to make that happen. You're not just sitting there looking at advertisements and developing those. So just how much the scope of brand encompasses is a misconception. And I think being a total brand owner and having ownership over a full brand and that CEO mentality is how I would describe it.
I just want to tell a funny story in line with that. And usually I'll let the people working in the field now speak because they're closer to it than I am, but I think it's funny. So I'm working right now personally on a Get Out the Vote initiative. And so I'm in this group and I'm doing a lot of the grassroots, work to get people out to vote. But then they came back and they said, well, we need a commercial. Roseann, can you make it for us? Because you worked in brand management. And I was like, I have never made a commercial in my life, but I can find someone who does. And I think that's the brand manager, that you're in there and you're running the business, but the misconception is people think you're making Nike ads, just do it. And you don't know how, but you know people who do. And that's true across all of it. So I just wanted to jump in with that story because it made me laugh. And Kat, you got right there. If I were going to take an emphasis from brand and management, I would put it on management. And that people think that it's marketing and then people think that's advertising or promotion, but it actually is management. And I personally think, and we'll get into this later, but I think over a long career, what has made me, and I was not a business, I was an economics major undergrad, because that was probably the closest to business that there was. But I think the number one thing that made me so successful in brand management is that I am a humanist at my core. I love people. I think they're really interesting. I am constantly trying to put puzzles together of people and why they do what they do. So it's got so much psychology to it. Now I want to be clear, and I'll let the other people jump in. When you're a brand assistant, you are a doer. You are managing your task list. You are hitting your results. You are doing. But the underpinning that over the course of my career allowed me to be extraordinarily successful, and I think it allows me to be successful as a professor, is a connection to humans, underpinning of managing the business. So with that, I'll pop back out. But it was just a fun time to jump in.
Yeah, and to go off of Kat's comments about you are the CEO of your brand, it's 100% accurate. And I think the most interesting part on top of that really made me take this career path is that you are telling a story in a way that makes your company the most successful, and also is a clear message to the people that you are analyzing, which are the consumers, which my consumer behavior class was probably the most valuable to me, that really made me want to take a more general marketing approach. Yes, I'm super deep into social media advertising, graphic design, working for a medium sized company. But my overall emphasis is working with the CEO, the president, the director of sales, the financial team, and the business analysts to see what things need more of an emphasis at which times to make sure our brand is at its strongest all the time. And then also making sure that we're analyzing the people and what they're responding to make sure that we're getting the most reward for our hard work. So I think that the human aspect is huge in the brand manager's side of things. If it's somebody who's a brand assistant, like was mentioned in the past, so my marketing intern, yeah, their task might be just social media, because that's what they're good at. And that's what I don't have enough time to focus on, because I have other things that I'm spread thin on to make sure that the brand is consistent and is always received in the same way and organized. But that overall human interaction is probably the most important aspect of making sure your brand comes across the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, completely. Not a lot to add to what has been said, because I think that it's been said well. I think it's interesting when you do ask, like when you tell somebody you're a marketer and do marketing, like their brain automatically goes to advertising. You're like, well, yeah, I tell them what I want to see, and then they bring it to life. I don't really do that, like Roseann said, but it's a lot of kind of just managing, reacting to the market and how the market shifts, and being aware of that. It's the management piece of it, and I think the hub, the CEO of your brand are dead spot on. So.
Great. So I think that's really helpful to kind of establish that as the definition of a brand manager, that you're really the CEO of a specific brand within a company. Now, a lot of you touched on, consumer behavior, psychology, working with people. So I'm wondering if maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into that and talk about what does that look like in your day-to-day, and understanding the consumer and the psychology. How does that really play into your role as a brand manager?
I'll give one quick example because it's what I deal with a lot. So email marketing campaigns, A/B testing is huge for a company like ours that has a very diverse client base. So constantly changing subject lines and analyzing how those are received are a huge piece of our email strategy. In terms of seeing what triggers more responses, whether it's attending an event or using our staffing services, etc.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's because we have focus on. I'm actually on the HCP side, but we kind of cross like on the healthcare provider side. So we have different customer groups. But right now, currently, we are doing interviews. We have a new indication for the drug that I work on that's coming out in probably a year or two. So currently, we are interviewing people who have this disease across the country, understanding what it is that they deal with, what are their tensions, when they kind of think about their drug and it affects their daily life, like how do they cope with that, so that we can understand when we actually go to message to these people, that we can make these insights actionable, and that we can actually reach them and solve the tension that they have. So a lot of interviews, a lot of qualitative interviews on top of a lot of quantitative stuff, but just really kind of deep diving into the people that we serve.
Yeah, I think that communication is so important, from internal to external communication. So internal being within the team, and external being eventually what customers see and consumers. And you have to have good internal communication skills to bring those products to life and to get there and to reach customer shelves and to reach consumers externally. So it's small things to big things. So it's small things from learning what motivates each person on your direct team, learning their preferred method of communication. Are they better with emails, or do they generally not check their email because they're tied up in meetings and they'd rather you just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you do a 5-minute phone call? And those little things then lead to bigger things. Then you get people aligned with your vision and the strategy that you're developing. Then your communication skills go to also, meetings that you're a part of and meetings that you're running, and making sure everybody is clearly aligned with what the goal is. And then as far as customers go, when you're selling a product, I think psychology comes into play there as well, because you're not always with P&G. A lot of our products are the number 1 or number 2 brand in the category, but for example, Gain Dish is nowhere near as big as Dawn. So when we're selling Gain Dish, you have to really think about how you position your message and your slides, and why a customer and ultimately a consumer should believe in this brand. So storytelling and like building out slides is something that I didn't realize was such a big part of brand management, but the psychology behind that, and having a really sales oriented lens when you do think of how you're developing your brand's story and why it makes sense for customers and consumers, is something that is very crucial as well.
So I would just jump in and bring it up the rear, or bring it up at the end, and just say, anybody that's had one of my classes, doesn't matter if you take 3 of them, you have to watch it 3 times. It's the Simon Sinek Why, How, What video. And I use that because I think the consumer connection is all about deeply understanding the why. I think about that, I can give a couple stories, because I do think it's all about understanding the story of the customer, whether that customer is the ultimate customer, retailer that carries your brand, or people you work with. I mean, they're all humans, and you need to deeply understand their story. So, for example, when I worked at P&G on this cruddy little floor cleaner, top job, I didn't understand. I was responsible for driving a promotion that exceeded the results of previous promotions. That was my job. But what I didn't understand was why people cleaned their floors. Like, I really just didn't understand it. And you had to buy 4 different cleaners, structure, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't understand it. And I was the cleaner in my house. My mom worked, I cleaned, I did the floors. But then I was busy and I did not do the floors. I mean, I was like, who does this? And what it turned out was the people that do it care deeply about their family. That's why they clean the floors. That is a consumer interaction that drove everything else we did. We changed our advertising, we changed the promotions, we changed everything. Because it wasn't about the what of cleaning the floors, it was about the why. The same thing happened at Reebok. Reebok, when I went, even though it started and its roots are women and fitness, it was run by a lot of men. And this is just true. It's not bashing either end, but the thinking was around why men work out and how men are satisfied by that. But those aren't the same things as why women work out. And so again, I was like, no, I don't need to sell the sweat and the minutes of the workout. I need to deeply understand why these women are doing what they're doing and how that impacts their lives. And from that, we totally restructured the business, because it was that centering on the why. Now, another story in the why is about Foot Locker, our key vendor, and understanding their needs. Because at one point we worked out this whole product line. It was beautiful. Let me be clear, it was awesome. And we got it to Foot Locker and they said, we're not buying that line, because that line is Nike's line and they already have it. It's right there. This is the line we need from you. This is what Reebok means for women. And so go back and come back. And I was probably your age or a little bit older when I made that mistake. And it was an awesome mistake to make, because it was the why of Foot Locker and our role in their story. So I think you've heard a lot of these messages, but I also believe that the marketer's job, the brand manager's job, and it's really hard, is to rise above the what. And you have to do the what, but you need to have the vision of the story and the why. And that will help you make choices, because as everyone here can tell you, you make choices all day long. And if you're not anchored, it's really hard. So just a little background to that, what I think everyone answered just extraordinarily well on what the consumer means in this space.
Love that. Any additional thoughts on that question? I wasn't sure if Eric or Kyler, if you had anything to add. But I love, Roseann, I still remember watching that video in your class, and I forced my team to watch it in career services so that we could understand our why. And I love framing everything in that mindset. Now, I know does that sometimes feel like it's a little bit of a lofty ideal when you've got all these other details and things to do and you've got the day-to-day? Like, I'm just wondering what that, like, for the rest of, like, Kat and Kyle and Eric, how successfully are you able to really keep that why in mind, given the magnitude of your responsibilities?
Absolutely. So at P&G, one thing I love is we don't lose sight of that. Like, we work with our agencies and we spend time looking at our brand pyramid and, like what is the purpose? Like, why does Dawn exist? And we try to stay grounded. And you're right, it is easy to get off track when you get caught up in the day-to-day fire drills that come up or supply issues, or you're looking at sales. But we really do try to stay grounded in the fact of thinking, why does Dawn exist? And our purpose, our why, is we exist to give consumers the time, or give consumers the freedom to do more of what they love. So we want to help consumers get their dishes done fast so they can get back to watching a movie with their family or playing with their kids. And we try to build everything around that. And we refresh this brand pyramid and we take it really seriously. So it can be, easy to kind of lose sight of that. But ultimately, I think leadership does a phenomenal job of making sure that we keep it top of mind and use that framework and really make sure that the consumer is at the heart of it all whenever we are building new products. And even today, before I got on this call, we were doing research for the whole day, the past 2 days, understanding the sensorial consumer. Because outside of Dawn, you have Gain Dish. And Gain Dish is more about the smell and being a fun brand and doing the dishes less mundane. But we felt that we didn't fully understand it. We're like, well, what does the sensorial consumer really want? Who are they? Like, how do we define sensorial? Is it someone who just, likes the way a product smells, or could it be visual cues? Like they want that aesthetic appealing packaging, or they look to make even the most mundane or boring moments in life even more exciting. So we did research the past 2 days to really understand this consumer and spent like 2 hours with each one of them. So I think that P&G does do a good job with researching and keeping that why in mind as we build out innovation and strategies.
Yeah, in my case, it's that's all we do. So we actually build a persona, a patient persona that we name, and we build the persona based on the whys around her life. And so our patient is called Anna. So we talk about Anna every day. She's at the forefront of what we do. We actually talk about her like she's a real person that's with us. And Anna, she's usually the center of her family life. She's a strong person. She feels like life has been kind of taken away from her. And she feels like she's cheating the rest of her family because she can't do what she needs to do. So we actually try to give her back a little bit of her life every day so that she can give back the way that she wants to, rather than feel like she's a burden on it. So it's constantly whenever we make a decision, it's with that. You don't ever make it outside of that. It's always within those parameters. So
yeah, we do something similar with Sizemore and Company. One of our biggest brands is called CURT, Construction Users Roundtable. It's an association management group that if Google is building a $400 million data center, they are members of our association for best practices, workforce issues in construction, etc. And the abbreviation is CURT. So CURT is the ideal member consumer that we target, and we build our annual marketing strategy around what does CURT need to be successful through our association. And does that annual change? Yes, probably monthly to some extent, but it's very minor changes because our industry does not change as quickly with the staffing and construction. And that goes off of the consumer behavior stuff and on if we change something or the time of the year. But ultimately, each one of the brands that Sizemore and Company owns has its own specific annual marketing strategy that we work on October, November, December for the January new year. And that is how we know that we are at least staying close to our why and our company's mission as a whole, which is we exist to help other organizations grow, succeed, and realize their potential in the market. Just because we touch staffing, construction, and then investing. So.
Awesome.
Can I just add one little closing thought on how to keep in touch with the why, because I think it's really hard, or at least it would be hard. It was hard for me. And so one of the things that I made a point of doing, and it was a little bit unusual, for among my peer group, but it really played out for me was I scheduled a day a month minimum out in the field. And whether that was traveling with salespeople, going on key calls, if I didn't have something set up and I was at P&G, I would just go to grocery stores and mass markets and hang out. At Reebok, I would go and visit cutting edge clubs or go to key vendors. I just always would take classes, but I would take a day a month and do it in advance, or I never would have done it. And then I would fill it with, okay, I've got to reach out to somebody and see if I can tag along that day or do whatever. So that was one thing. And then tie together with your first question, Brian, and Kat's answer is that the brand managers is the general manager of the business. They are the CEO, and your job is to be Anna. The room, to use Eric's description, because your job is to make decisions and sort of facilitate conversations with that person in the room, and no one else has that hat on. So it's almost a customer facing role while you're running everything. That's the two pieces come together.
Love it. Thank you all so much for providing a little day-to-day context of how, you know, the why really hits in each of your respective areas. I do want to turn this, so I think we have a decent understanding now of what brand management is. I think it'll be helpful for us now to kind of move into some more tangible and actionable advice for the students on the call, which, by the way, for those of you students who are on the call, please feel free to use the chat to put in any questions that you have for our panelists about brand management. We want to just make sure that we are being as relevant as possible with all of you. But I do want to take a moment now. Let's talk about, okay, realistically speaking, before all of you got into brand management, what did you have on your resumes that allowed you to get into that field? And what advice do you have for students who are on the call who are looking to get into brand management, you know, looking to get that first internship? What kinds of things would you be looking for as a hiring manager to know that they could be successful in that kind of a role?
I would say definitely leadership skills, more than anything else. And there are definitely a lot of different characteristics that are important, but your resume needs to scream leadership. And you can do that by, it's not about how many teams you're a part of. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a part of 5 or 7 teams, you could be a part of 1 or 2 teams, but you want to show how passionate you are about it and the impact that you make. So like, whatever you are involved in, fully immerse yourself in it, take leadership roles and make an impact. So again, it's not how wide you can stretch yourself, it's how deep you can go with what you are involved in. And then I would say also results are very important. So taking time to really look at, again, the impact that you've made in co-ops or internships that you've had. And they don't need to be, you know, the best co-op or the best internship. You just need to really have tangible results. Like, did you increase production? Did you come up with a system that was then able to be reapplied and help, you know, like XYZ? So really take time to bring those results to life and quantify them. And then leadership skills are definitely a must-have.
Yeah, I would say there's 2 other things that I look for. One's on the resume, and then one's kind of from maybe the first phone screen. The first one would be like analytical skills, in addition to what Kat said, mainly because if they are super analytical with a marketing background, I think that puts them in a good position to help you in more than one area of the brand. So whether it's social media and the analytics behind it that trigger an advertisement or vice versa. And then the other thing is, I always ask the person that I'm interested in, what is your why specifically? Because if they say, oh, I just want a job, oh, I think I like marketing or X, Y, and Z, that doesn't do enough for me. Because I want to know that they have skin in the game to produce results and to have a reason to want to grow in their career.
Great. So we've got leadership, passion, impact, really showing the results of your impact and what you've done in previous positions. Anything, and then Kyle talking about the analytical skills and results. Anything to add to that, Roseann or Eric?
Eric, are you set?
I am good. Not much to add to that. If we're kind of talking about just your own brand and pulling that through in everything you do. So I don't know if we're going to talk about that later, but I think that's hugely important.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
I would just say, I think we hit on bunches of the things. I do say right in there with this idea of analytics is that it really doesn't matter what space you're in marketing right now. You need a seat at the table when it comes to analytics. And what I mean is by a seat at the table is that you understand it. You don't have to do it. You don't have to get the data set and crunch it, but you need to be comfortable with analytics and how they apply within this space. And happens you're at a great place to learn and get comfortable in that. You're at one of the best schools out there for data analytics. So I think that's really important. So I'm really glad, Kyle, that came up. One of the things, and I think Kat hit this when she said leadership, is that I think people that are successful in brand management naturally get involved in things. And when they naturally get involved in those things, they see the future as different than the current and different than the past. You're naturally wanting to improve things and change them and get people more involved. It's your lens into the world. And so if you're in this space, then you can't help yourself. You can't just go to class all day because it does not feed you. You will naturally have passions for things. You will go out and get involved. And when you do, they will put you in charge. That is how it works with brand management. And you will be like, how did I get in charge? And it will be because you naturally sort of put order in the chaos. You naturally think about what could we do that would get more people to this event, or what could we do to engage more this way? So it's part of who you are. And the only reason I wanted to jump in here is that I do think it's really important as your careers unfold that you start with your brand, your personal brand. Mm-hmm. Who are you? What makes you happy? When naturally do you feel like you've been a success, you've done something meaningful, and then take you as you are and bring that into your work. Don't try to be something you're not, because honestly, it's not fun. If you try to be something you're not, then you're going to have to go to work and try to be something you're not. And it turns out it's way more fun to be who you are. And to be accepted for who you are. You're always trying to get better. You're always learning things, but spending a little time on your own brand and who you are is really good work to do too. But what will get you hired is exactly what Kat said: leadership, results, and never underestimate the power of enthusiasm, ever. Having interviewed so many people, I cannot tell you what a difference it makes when someone's excited to be there. So just that's an intangible, but just keep that in your back pocket. This is what I used to do. A little advice before we move on. When I had an interview, I would stop prepping the day before. My prep would be done, and then the day of the interview, let's get a little zen. I would actually visualize having a great time. Having a conversation I was excited about, and it would lift me up and out of my stress. So there's nothing like closing down your prep and then actually getting in the room and imagining it goes really well. And then off you go. And then you'll bring that energy into the room.
I love that all so much. You're giving me chills here, Roseann. I think just exactly what you just said about just being excited about the company and the position just goes so far in an interview. And I think that's such an important thing to really take note of. Any other thoughts on personal branding or building your personal brand? Other tangible ways that students can be doing that from any of the other panelists? Any other thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most important things. And honestly, like it's everybody that you're going to probably go up against these jobs for are going to have a marketing foundation, right? And some might be a little bit better than others, but everybody's going to know the same things. To Roseann's point, it's about that passion you have for the work that you're trying to do, but then it's also what do you bring to the table that's different than the other people around you. And some you don't need to force it. You just need to understand introspectively what and how that manifests into a positive or something that can help the brand, the company out. That was probably the thing that took me the longest to figure out how I could verbalize that. So the sooner you get to that part of your whole package, the better off you're going to be. I don't like talking about myself. I actually had an interview yesterday or Tuesday for another position, and they asked the question, how would your friends describe you? And it took me a while to be able to be comfortable answering that question. But when you think about that, it really does start to make you focus on what makes you unique and different and what you bring to the table that is going to be different than the other folks around. So find what you're passionate about and find what drives you and what kind of unique lens that you can add and bring to the table.
I would say also staying self-aware is something that I fail sometimes at, but I really try to do. And it's very important because then you know your strengths and you know your weaknesses and you can work on your weaknesses. But I think almost more importantly, you can capitalize on your strengths, because at the end of the day, you do want to improve those opportunity areas and those weaknesses, but they never have to be your strengths. And that's okay because we're all different. But if you know what your strengths are, then you can really bring them to the table and you can contribute to the best of your ability and serve your own personal brand and then the bigger brand that you are working for. And then also just, I try to learn something new every day outside of work. So if an article comes up and it's about, I think communication is super important. So how to communicate better in a conversation over the phone or just, whatever it may be, little things like that can really help. And just reflecting on yourself and again, your strengths and your weaknesses. For example, I wanted to improve my public speaking. So I started recording myself and I had no idea how many times that I said and I listened to it and I thought, oh my gosh, how have I gone this long? And, I haven't known this. So I think just keeping your eyes open, learning every day, learning how you can better communicate to and impact those around you, and then growing yourself and then other people as well is super important.
And I think part of your personal brand, there's the physical side with how you present yourself in person, but where you need to make sure that you really have a strong digital brand as well, just like with athletes and actresses and actors. If I'm looking at a person in the marketing field for a position and I go look on social media or just Google them in general and I see no digital footprint or one that's kind of poorly put together that I have to do a lot of digging to understand, your personal brand gets, it goes down pretty quickly in my eyes if you're not presenting yourself well digitally just as well as if I was talking to you in person, because that comes down to attention to detail and just making sure you're gonna put your brand treat my brand as in Sizemore and Company just as important as you would treat your own personal brand, and how would those match up?
One thing that Kat said that I think you started out this way, and your interest in communication, I think is really interesting, because I always say life is a communication problem. It just is, because it's humans talking to each other. And we mean to say something, but the other person hears something different. So life is a communication problem, whether you're at home, at work, or on a brand. And I think it was really interesting, Kat, when you were talking about your team and really taking the time to think about them and how they would best receive your information, because I spend a lot of time thinking about that. Thinking about of all the ways that I could communicate, what is the best way to communicate with this person in this moment in time? Like sometimes you get a text and or an email and it's not it doesn't come across as very warm and friendly. And perhaps you should talk to that person, human to human. You should pick up the phone if it's a COVID time or do whatever. But I think that that's a really interesting point, because something that we haven't talked about a whole lot in this space, but is really important, is that if you're in brand management, you work with people all day long. Different people all the time. It is management on steroids, and management is really hard. Everybody says, oh, business, it's all about management and it's so fun. But the truth of the matter is there's people that don't need to be managed. They're extraordinary in their own right, and you just want to empower them. And there's people that suck and they don't want you around. And that is how it plays out. And so the number one thing truly in this is you need to love all kinds of people. The consumer is great, but you need to love people, because you're going to get them all. And then life is a communications problem. It really is. Starting not just with the ads and the promotions, but with the people you interact with every day, and each thing you send, and intentionally pausing to think about what's the right way to do it. Haven't you ever been in a text chain and you're like, shoot me, this could have just been an awesome 3-minute conversation. And so then you have to cut it and make the call, right? Instead of continuing in the wrong medium of the conversation. Or you're in a long phone call and you're like, this could have been a text, but anyway, just think about it, and think about it in the shoes of the other person who you're trying to connect with.
Love it. Thank you all so much for your insight on that. I do want, since we're down to about 12 minutes here, I want to make sure that we're getting to the questions that some people have posed in the chat. So let's start with Sarah's about what suggestions do you have for a young professional in our shoes to break into purpose-driven branding/marketing? Suggestions for a young professional to break into purpose-driven branding and marketing.
I would diversify your experiences as much as you can. Maybe your focus is in social media and maybe you stay in that, but I would try to diversify the types of companies you work with, whether it's a large corporation or a small to medium sized organization, for a couple reasons. One, it's just you have many different responsibilities at a larger corporation than you do at a smaller one. You might be doing more administrative tasks at a larger one, or working on different projects and working with a manager, versus if you're at a small to medium sized company, maybe you're working directly with the president and CEO who came from a larger company and might be willing to share different experiences as well. I've done ones at companies that have thousands of employees, and then ones that have had 12 employees. So both of them were super valuable. I wouldn't lean working at one versus another, but they both had huge impacts on me for positive ways. So I would say don't get in the mindset that you have to work only at small companies or only at large companies. Try to do a little bit of both, because they all have different learning opportunities to help grow before you enter the workforce as a graduate.
I would say that you have to advocate for yourself. So, for example, if there's a company that you want to work for and they're on campus for an event, don't just show up and sit in the back and not participate. Like, you need to sit in the front row, and you need to ask questions and be eager. And then after it, hand them your resume, ask for their emails, ask if they could get a cup of coffee with you, and you can follow up and learn more about their career and how they've got to where they are, because you're interested in that too. Because at the end of the day, companies get hundreds, thousands of resumes, and they don't hire the piece of paper, they hire the person. So the more people you know, and the more eager that you are to learn, they will see that. And that can get you so far. Making connections and networking, and then just mentoring in general, is something that I wish that I would have known like freshman year. I think I kind of figured it out later, but it just helps so much, because like as you're getting into the industry, like I realized that I I really don't know a whole lot, but there are people who are willing to help me that have been here before, that have given me the time of day and that have helped lead me to get this role, or that still help me today as I continue to learn in brand management. So you have to be your own advocate. So I would say, you think it might not make a difference, but I promise you it does. So send that LinkedIn request, send that email, ask them to get coffee. If not coffee, then connect over the phone. And then from there, is there anybody else that I could talk to, to learn more? And networking at the end of the day will be your best friend, because you probably think that everybody's doing it, but at the end of the day, very few people do.
Yeah, I think Kat hit it on the head. Like, those things are extremely bold, showing enthusiasm, as we talked about before. People take notice of that. And if you put your foot forward and show the initiative, that says a lot about you as who you are and what drives you. They'll take notice of that. I mean, they may not have something for you right away, but persistence and make sure that, you're not annoying about it, but staying in contact is huge. I was not very good at networking at all. And Dr. Hassey and I had this discussion several times. And we decided to rename it a tribe of support. And so I think of networking as that now. And I will tell you that anytime somebody from UC Lindner reaches out to me, I always answer. I always make the time to talk to them. I always make the time to try to see if I can help them, connect them with somebody else. Because Kat's right, like, that's how people get the inside edge is through the people they know and the suggestions and the references and referrals. But it's about enthusiasm and desire when you get down to it. So,
and the only other thing that I might say in that space, because I think we've hit a lot of it, but one is, if you want to do purpose-driven work, then start doing it. Get involved with social engagement, not-for-profits, and do meaningful work on the side. Gosh, you could do it at UC. The United Way has a board and a volunteer bank. If there's an organization you want to help, there's a way to do it. So have a resume that screams that you're about purpose. The next thing I would say is that quality companies care, period. And you can tell because they start by caring about their employees, because they value them. And that is a humanist model. And so you need to look for quality organizations. They're not in the transaction business, they're in the relationship business. And that gets to the heart of purpose. And so choose wisely. And then now I think purpose is very much out in the world of business. Thank goodness. I think it's a great, great evolution. But it wasn't when I started business, but I'm about purpose. And so I spent the time thinking about how I could create purpose in my consumers' lives and on my team. And we did, whether it's floor cleaning and it's about your family, that's purpose, or it's going to the gym and that's about women's health, that's purpose. So you also have some personal agency in the work you do and how you choose to pursue that work. So I think all of those fit out. And then I think, Eric, I have to laugh because networking is poorly branded.
It's so true.
It sounds like a transaction and it's a relationship. People always tell me I'm an extraordinary networker and it grosses me out because actually I just have a lot of friends. Like I consider my ex-students, I consider everyone my friend, just so you know, my kids laugh about it, that the Starbucks baristas are my friends. And I would help them if they asked, but that's what it is. It's a tribe of people that you care about. And people actually get value and meaning out of helping other people. That's the tribe and it's mutual. Networking implies it's a one-way street. And that is, thank goodness, Eric, that's not something that appeals to you. So.
Yeah, as among the many things, great things I learned from you, that was one of them. And I'm so happy to get back. That's why I'm here today. So.
I wish we had 2 hours together because I feel like we could just keep going on and on about all of this. You all have had such wonderful advice to share. we're down to about 5 minutes, and I want to make sure that we rapid fire some of these last questions to make sure that students get them. So we'll just try to answer these really quickly if anybody has really quick thoughts. Number one, Ben says he's curious as to the skills and strengths that you identified within yourselves that made you think that brand management would be a strong fit. Silence.
I would say leadership is a big one. And part of leadership, like my boss says this a lot, she has a bias toward action. So if you're working on a project and it's not moving, you get in, you make something happen. I would also say being a people person. Like, I like to work with other people. I like to find out what motivates them, and how to, best grow myself and other people as well. And relationships are very important to me. And then lastly, I think organizational skills. When you are working on a big brand, you could be doing 25, 30 things at one time, and you have to keep them all separate. And then, those would be my top three.
Awesome. And I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to jump into the last question. We'll go across the board really quickly. Your favorite project or campaign that you've worked on, from Zach. Zach wants to know your favorite project or campaign. So we'll just go from top to bottom. Roseann, what comes to mind for that?
The not-for-profit I founded, and the events that we did.
Love it. Kat, what about you? Oh, you're on mute, Kat.
The amount of times that happens day to day during meetings. I would say for me, it's creating products that might one day launch on Dawn Dish and testing them and really meeting the consumer's needs and figuring out how to make their life more impactful. We had a really big test about a year ago and tested out all new different sorts of innovations. So that was super fun.
Wonderful. Kyle, thoughts?
Yeah, probably building the 4 digital footprints that Sizemore and company owns, from creating their first websites to having thousands of followers on social media and just growing the brand digitally.
Great. What about Eric?
For me, it'd be reimagining how our peer-to-peer channel and our conference channel, how we kind of message and communicate with our HCPs, kind of reimagine it so it's much better experience on their end.
That's great. Well, it's already 4:29. I don't know what happened to the hour. That one flew by. Thank you all so much for your willingness to join us today. This has been such a joy to get to talk to you. This has been my favorite panel discussion thus far. So special thanks to the 4 of you, Roseann, Kat, Kyle, and Eric. We really appreciate it. Students on the call, I'm going to speak on behalf of the panelists and say, feel free to reach out. I'm sure that they would love to make that connection with you and kind of putting into practice what Roseann was saying about building relationships, not networking with people. So by all means, if there were any questions that you have about brand management that weren't answered, I think our panelists would be more than willing to address those on a one-on-one basis. That is all that we have for you. Again, thank you to the panelists. Carly, is there anything else that you would like to say before we sign off here? Oh, maybe.
Sorry, I have some children running around too. Nothing necessarily super impactful, but just really thank you. And I just love hearing people talk passionately about their work. And this was definitely one of the things that was so obvious. And if you felt that while you were listening to that, I feel like that's a good indication that this might be a potential field that you could go into. So reach out, these connections, because when students talk to Brian and I about brand management, we're always saying you've got to talk to the people who are doing it. That's when you're gonna know what to do to get there. So, but talk to us, talk to them, use this information. Thank you for all of the advice. It was really great hearing about everything.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Students, thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.